She had just given birth. The monitors were still beeping softly. Her newborn daughter was wrapped against her chest, warm, tiny, breathing for the first time in this world. And yet, in the moment when she needed him the most, he walked away. He left right after labor, left her in that hospital room with stitches still fresh, pain still sharp, and a baby who depended on her for every heartbeat. She waited at first. Maybe he's getting food. Maybe he's making a phone call. Maybe he fainted. She kept telling herself something reasonable, something human. But when she called him, his phone went straight to voicemail. When she checked the hallway, his jacket was gone. When she asked the nurse simply said, "Honey, he signed himself out." That's when the truth hit her like ice water. She wasn't just tired. She wasn't just scared. She had been abandoned, right after bringing their child into the world. But what she didn't know, what would change her life forever, was that someone had been watching, someone who knew her partner, someone who knew the truth. And when this quiet stranger approached her hospital bed and whispered, "He lied to you," everything she thought she knew about the man who left her collapsed. Was it about the baby? About his past? About her? About something far darker? You're about to find out. Before we continue, if this story touches your heart, tap the like button. It truly helps the channel reach more people who love emotional stories. The delivery room still smelled of antiseptic and warm blankets when Lena Carter finally opened her eyes again. The exhaustion of labor weighed heavy on her body, every muscle trembling, every breath unsteady. But when she looked down and saw her baby girl lying against her chest, tiny and perfect, she felt something fierce rise inside her, a love that made every hour of pain worth it. She smiled weakly. "She's here. We did it," she whispered. Her partner, Evan, had been by her side earlier, holding her hand through contractions, wiping her forehead, whispering promises like, "I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. You'll never be alone." Words that had felt like anchors in the storm. But now the chair beside her bed was empty. She blinked, confused at first. Maybe he stepped out for a minute. Maybe he went to call her mother. Maybe he needed fresh air after the chaos of delivery. She didn't worry. Not yet. A nurse walked in, adjusting the monitor above her bed. "Congratulations, sweetheart," she said warmly. "She's beautiful." Lena smiled tiredly. "Thanks. Do you know where Evan went?" "He was just here." The nurse hesitated. "Not long, but enough." "Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe he went to grab something." It wasn't a comforting answer. Still, Lena nodded and focused on the baby again, tracing her tiny fingers. Her daughter yawned, making the softest sound Lena had ever heard. "All right, little one. Daddy will be right back," Lena murmured. Minutes passed, then 20, then 30. The hallway remained silent. Her phone lay on the rolling table beside the bed. With trembling hands, Lena reached for it and opened her messages. The last text from Evan was sent an hour before the birth. "I'm right here. You're not alone." She dialed his number, straight to voicemail. Her chest tightened. She dialed again. Voicemail. "Come on, Evan," she whispered, trying to keep panic from clawing its way up her throat. The nurse returned to check the baby's vitals and noticed Lena's expression. "Sweetheart, do you want me to look for him?" "Yes," Lena breathed, relief flooding her. "He must just be outside or something." The nurse nodded and stepped into the hallway. Lena tried to stay calm. Maybe he fainted. Maybe he needed to eat. Maybe something urgent happened. But her heart knew better. It kept pounding in an unfamiliar, terrible rhythm. 10 minutes later, the nurse returned. But this time, her expression wasn't soft. "Lena, honey, I checked the hallway, the waiting area, even the front desk. And," Lena pressed, voice shaking. The nurse exhaled heavily. "He signed himself out." Lena stared blankly. "What?" "He left. He walked out about 15 minutes after the birth." Lena's vision blurred. He what?" No, that can't be right. He wouldn't do that." But the nurse's eyes were honest. Kind, but brutally honest. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." A sob built in Lena's chest, raw and desperate. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to breathe, trying not to break apart. Her stitches burned. Her body ached. Milk was beginning to come in. She was exhausted, bleeding, terrified, and abandoned. Her baby whimpered, sensing her mother's pain. Lena pulled her daughter close. No. He wouldn't leave us. He promised. Promises were easy. Leaving was easier. She tried calling again. Voicemail. Then again. Voicemail. Finally, her phone lit up with a notification. Blocked. Her knees went weak. He had blocked her. He blocked the mother of his newborn child. A wave of nausea hit her so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Tears poured down her cheeks as she looked at her daughter, the tiny life they had created together, and realized he had chosen to disappear in her weakest moment, in her most vulnerable hour. Lena sobbed silently, shoulders shaking, trying to keep the baby calm, even while her own world was collapsing. A quiet shadow moved at the doorway. Someone had seen everything. Someone who recognized the look of a woman whose entire life had just been shattered. And he stepped into the room slowly, not saying a word yet, but clearly knowing far more than he should. The shadow lingered at the doorway for a few seconds before stepping inside, quiet and careful, as if not wanting to startle her. Lena wiped her tears quickly with the sleeve of her gown, trying to look composed even though her entire life felt like it had collapsed just minutes earlier. "Sorry," she said automatically, adjusting her daughter in her arms. "This room is occupied." "I know," the man replied gently. His voice was low, calm, the kind of voice people used when approaching a wounded animal. "I just wanted to check if you're all right." He was no doctor, not with those old boots, that slightly worn jacket, that badge clipped crookedly on his belt. He looked like someone who worked in maintenance, maybe even a volunteer. But his eyes were too perceptive. They weren't curious. They were familiar, like he already knew what had happened. Lena tensed. "I'm fine," she lied, holding her baby closer. "Really, I don't need anything." He nodded, but didn't walk away. "I heard what the nurse said," he said softly, "about him leaving." Lena's stomach twisted so hard she felt dizzy. She didn't want an audience for her humiliation. She didn't want pity. She didn't want anyone knowing the father of her newborn had walked out minutes after she'd risked her life to bring their child into the world. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice cracked. "People leave." The stranger looked at her, as if he understood that sentence far too well. He took one slow step closer. "People do leave," he said quietly. "But not usually like that. Not without a word. Not without reason." Lena swallowed hard. She didn't like how he said that, as if there was a reason, as if he knew it. She breathed in shakily. "Do I know you?" He hesitated. "No," he said, "but I know him." Her heart stopped. She froze so completely that even her baby's soft breaths felt loud in the room. "What?" she whispered. You know Evan?" The stranger nodded once. Lena's mind spun. How? Why? Where? The man stepped closer, pulling the curtain halfway closed to give them privacy. It was a strange gesture, protective almost. "My name is Mark," he said. "I work here, not as a doctor or anything big, just maintenance, fixing lights, unclogging drains, replacing tiles, little things no one pays attention to." Lena stared at him, confused. What did that have to do with Evan? How could someone like him know her partner? Mark sat on the small chair beside the bed, but kept his hands folded, respectful. "I wasn't going to say anything," he murmured. "I wasn't even supposed to. But when I saw you crying, when I saw the baby, I just couldn't walk away." Lena's pulse quickened. "Mark, what are you talking about?" He inhaled deeply, as if preparing himself. "Evan isn't who you think he is." The words hit her harder than the news of him leaving. Lena felt her throat close. Don't say that. You don't even know me." "I know him," Mark repeated, firmer this time. "And that's enough." Her mind flashed with denial. Evan wasn't perfect, but he was charming. He was sweet. He had a job, a family, dreams. He had helped decorate the nursery, had held her belly every night, had promised to be the best father. He had promised. "What are you trying to say?" Lena whispered. Mark leaned forward slightly. "I saw him here," he said. "Earlier today, before your labor, before you even checked in." Lena frowned. "But that doesn't make sense. He drove me here." Mark shook his head slowly. "He was here long before that, talking to someone, nervous, angry." Lena's stomach twisted. "No," she whispered. "You must be mistaken." Mark's expression softened. "I wish I were." He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. "I shouldn't have this," he admitted quietly, "but I found it after he left." He dropped it in the hallway. Lena stared at the paper as if it were a bomb. What is that?" Mark looked at her with an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. "It's the reason he walked out," he said, "and the reason I said he lied to you." Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook so violently the baby stirred. "What do you mean he lied?" Lena whispered. Mark unfolded the paper slowly, deliberately, as if revealing something sacred or dangerous. "Before you see this," he murmured, "you need to know one thing. None of this is your fault." Lena's world narrowed to a single point, to that piece of paper, to the truth she never asked for, to the stranger who knew more about her partner than she ever had. And as Mark held out the letter, Lena felt her entire life tilt on its axis. Lena stared at the folded paper in Mark's hand, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her fingers felt cold, weak, almost numb. She wasn't ready, she knew that, but she also knew she couldn't walk away from it. Whatever truth Evan hid, it had already destroyed her life once today. She couldn't let it happen twice. Before she could reach for it, the curtain was yanked open. A sharp, irritated voice sliced through the air. "What is this?" A nurse, not the kind one from earlier, but a different woman, stood with her arms crossed, eyes narrowed at Mark like he was trespassing in a restricted zone. "What are you doing in this patient's room?" she snapped. "You are maintenance. You are not authorized to be here." Lena flinched at the tone. Her baby whimpered. Mark stood slowly, folding the paper behind his back. "I was just checking on her," he said calmly. "Checking on her is not your job," the nurse retorted. "We have rules for a reason." Lena felt her face heat with embarrassment. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want more attention. Not now, not after everything. "He wasn't bothering me," she said quietly. He was helping, but the nurse didn't even look at her. Instead, she stepped closer to Mark, like he was some kind of intruder. "I know your story," she hissed under her breath, "and you should be the last person giving anyone advice." Lena's eyes widened. "What story? What did that mean?" Mark didn't react, not visibly. He kept his posture still, calm, almost resigned, like he'd heard this tone before, many times. "I'll go," he said softly, stepping back. "But she deserves to know the truth," the nurse scoffed. "The truth? The only truth is that her partner left her. End of story." Lena felt a sharp, painful twist in her chest. She didn't need the reminder, not from a stranger, not from anyone, but the cruelty in the nurse's voice made it worse. "You don't know what happened," Lena whispered. The nurse raised an eyebrow. "Maybe not, but I do know men leave women all the time. Crying won't change that." Lena's throat tightened. She looked down at her baby, trying to keep her breathing steady. Mark took a step closer, not to challenge the nurse, but to defend Lena. "She's just been through labor," he said firmly. "She's exhausted, scared, and alone. You don't get to speak to her like that." The nurse glared at him. "And you don't get to act like you're some hero. You're a janitor. Stay in your place." Mark's jaw clenched, the first real sign of anger. Lena looked between them, her heart pounding. She could see it. They knew each other. There was history here, complicated, unspoken, and dangerous. The nurse pointed toward the hallway. "Out." Mark hesitated, torn between protecting Lena and avoiding escalation. But before he could decide, Lena reached out. "Wait," she whispered. "Please, don't go." Her voice was trembling, but steady enough to make both of them stop. The nurse rolled her eyes. "Ma'am, you don't need his help." Lena lifted her daughter slightly, her hands still shaking. "What I need," she said softly, "is someone who actually cares." Silence filled the room. The nurse's expression faltered, just for a second, before she turned away sharply. "We'll talk later," she snapped at Mark. Then to Lena, "If you need anything medical, press the call button." She stormed out, letting the curtain fall behind her. The room went quiet again. Mark let out a slow breath. "I'm sorry," he said. "She's not wrong about me. I'm not perfect, but I didn't come here to hurt you." Lena swallowed. "What did she mean?" "Your story." Mark hesitated. Pain flickered across his face. "Later," he said. "What matters right now is you, and your baby, and the truth about Evan." He held out the folded paper again. Lena stared at it, fear curling in her stomach. "What's in there?" she whispered. Mark's voice dropped to a low, steady tone. "You asked earlier if I knew him. I do, and this," he lifted the paper slightly, "is the proof he never planned to stay." Her heart cracked. He planned this." Her voice broke on the last word. Mark nodded slowly. "I'm afraid so." Lena tightened her arms around her daughter. Her breath shuddered. Her body trembled. And as tears stung her eyes again, Mark said gently, "Before we go on, let me ask you something." He paused, meeting her gaze. "Have you ever seen someone be abandoned at the moment they needed help the most?" It was the perfect CTA. Emotional, natural, seamless. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat, because now she was living it. For a long moment, Lena just stared at the folded paper in Mark's hand. Small, ordinary, but suddenly the heaviest thing in the room. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The baby shifted in her arms, whimpering softly, sensing her mother's fear. Mark waited, patient and steady, giving her the silence she needed to gather herself. Why do you have that?" Lena finally whispered. Mark glanced down at the paper. He dropped it, in the hallway. "I saw it fall when he rushed out." She blinked, stunned. "He rushed?" Mark nodded once. He was angry, very angry, and scared. Scared? Evan? Scared? The man who had always claimed to be in control, confident, charming, the man who had told her she could depend on him. What was he scared of? Lena asked, her voice trembling. Mark inhaled slowly, as if measuring every word before speaking. "That's what I need to explain," he said. "But you need to understand something first. Evan, he wasn't here today by accident." Lena frowned. "What do you mean?" "He was here hours before you arrived," Mark said. "I told you that earlier. He wasn't just waiting for you. He was meeting someone." "Meeting who?" she whispered. Mark shook his head. "I didn't see the person's face, but I saw the way he spoke, the way he paced. He kept saying things like, 'I can't do this. She doesn't know. It's too late now.'" Lena felt as if the room tilted. "He was talking about you," Mark added softly. "About the baby." Her stomach clenched. Her throat tightened. "But why?" she choked out. "Why would he say that? Why would he talk about us like we're some kind of burden?" Mark didn't answer immediately. He looked down, as though he wished he could soften the truth somehow. "Because he lied to you long before today," he said. And that lie finally caught up with him. Tears pricked the corners of Lena's eyes. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold them back. "What lie?" she whispered. Mark unfolded the paper slowly, not to read it, but to show her the heading. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a note. It wasn't even handwritten. It was a form, a signature page with Evan's name on it, a document she had never seen before. Her vision blurred as she tried to focus on the text. "What is this?" Mark exhaled. "A discharge of responsibility." Lena stared blankly. I don't understand." "It's a legal document," Mark explained gently. "A man can sign it when he intends to remove himself from responsibility for a child before the birth is registered." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be real. He wouldn't do something like that. He was excited. He painted the nursery. He bought toys. He, Mark shook his head. "People can pretend, Lena. Some pretend better than others." Her world spiraled. She clutched her daughter tighter as if holding her would stop the pain from spreading. "He signed this?" she whispered. "Yes. When? I found it this morning, before your labor was even over." She closed her eyes. Her tears spilled freely now. The betrayal carved itself into her chest, cold and cruel. "He left right after you gave birth," Mark said softly. "But he prepared to leave long before that. He planned it." Lena cried harder, silently but uncontrollably. She remembered every promise Evan had whispered, every smile, every time he touched her belly and said he couldn't wait to be a father. Every moment she believed him, and she felt like a fool. "Why?" she asked again, voice breaking. "Why would he pretend? Why go through the whole pregnancy with me? Why stay by my side in the hospital, only to walk out?" Mark looked torn. "There's more," he said quietly, "and I'm not sure how to tell you." Lena opened her eyes slowly, tears clinging to her lashes. "Tell me," she whispered. Mark hesitated, a long, heavy hesitation, then said, "He wasn't planning to raise this baby with you. He wasn't planning to stay in your life. He was planning to disappear." Lena covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to sob. "But," Mark added softly, "that's not the worst part." Her breath hitched. "There's something else," he said, lowering his voice even more. "Something he kept hidden. Something that explains everything." Lena stared at him, terrified. What is it?" she whispered. Mark held her gaze, his eyes full of a sadness that told her the truth would hurt more than anything she had felt so far. "He didn't leave you because he stopped loving you," Mark said slowly. "He left you because he was living a lie before he ever met you." Lena froze. The room went silent, and with those words, the story shifted in a direction she never could have imagined. Lena felt the room shrinking around her, the beeping monitors fading into a distant hum. Her arms tightened around her newborn daughter, as if she could shield both of them from whatever Mark was about to say. Her heart thudded in her ears, loud enough to drown her own breath. "Living a lie?" she whispered. "What does that even mean? Evan wasn't perfect, but he wasn't some criminal." Mark didn't interrupt her. He just let her speak, let the panic spill from her in trembling words. "He was a good partner," she insisted softly. "He stayed with me through the pregnancy. He held my hand. He bought baby clothes. Lena." Mark's voice was gentle but firm, grounding her. "Some people can play a role for a very long time, sometimes because they're scared, sometimes because they're ashamed, and sometimes because they're trying to escape something that always catches up to them." Lena swallowed hard. What was he escaping? Mark glanced at the paper again. That cruel, simple document with Evan's signature scrawled across the bottom. "He wasn't supposed to be here," Mark said quietly. "Not in this town, not in this hospital, not anywhere near you." "That makes no sense," Lena whispered. "He lived here his whole life." Mark shook his head. "No, he didn't." Lena blinked. "What are you talking about? You only knew him for 2 years, right?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, and in those 2 years, did he ever introduce you to his extended family? Old friends? Childhood neighbors? Anyone from his life before you met?" Her breath caught. "He hadn't. Not once. Not a single person from before." "He said he didn't have a big family," she murmured. "He said his parents moved a lot for work." Mark exhaled softly. That was part of the lie. The words hit her like cold rain. "Evan changed his name," Mark said. 3 years ago." Lena's stomach dropped. "What?" she whispered. "He used a legal loophole, changed his identity, moved towns, built a new life from scratch. New job, new story, new everything." Her hands started shaking. "You're lying," she said, not because she believed that, but because she needed to believe it. "You must be mistaken. People don't just do that." "People do," Mark said quietly, "especially when they're trying to outrun consequences." Lena's chest tightened painfully. "What consequences?" Mark hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing on him. "He was in trouble before he met you," Mark said finally. "Financial trouble, legal trouble. He owed people money. He made promises he couldn't keep. And when everything closed in on him, he reinvented himself." Her pulse raced. "You mean he hid from his past?" she whispered. "Yes," Mark replied. "He ran, and he kept running, even when he started a life with you." Lena closed her eyes as if someone had struck her. Memories flashed through her mind. The hesitations, the unexplained calls, the nights he came home late, the tightness in his voice whenever she mentioned future plans, the way he avoided anything that tied him down. "He didn't leave because of you," Mark said gently. "He left because he never intended to stay once the baby was born. A child makes you traceable. It makes you visible." Lena's breath hitched. "So he was preparing to disappear again," she whispered. Mark nodded. "And when he signed that document, he made sure you and the baby wouldn't be able to follow him or claim anything from him." A silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. Lena looked down at her daughter, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He didn't just abandon us," she whispered. "He erased us." Mark's eyes softened. "He tried to, but he didn't succeed." Lena lifted her gaze, confused. "What do you mean?" Mark hesitated, again, because the next revelation was even heavier. "There's something else about his past," he said quietly. "Something he didn't expect anyone here to know." Lena felt her breath freeze in her lungs. "What is it?" she whispered. And Mark, with sorrow in his eyes, said, "The reason I recognized his name is because I was there the first time he ran." Her heart stopped. For a moment, Lena forgot how to breathe. "You were there," she whispered. "The first time he ran?" Mark nodded, slowly, as if each movement carried a memory he wished he could forget. "I recognized his signature," he said. "Not his face. He looks older now, leaner, different hair, but handwriting doesn't change. And the name he uses now? I knew the name he used before." Lena felt cold all over. "So you knew him through the hospital?" Mark looked down. "I wasn't a janitor back then." Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand over his face, his eyes tightening with something raw, something painful. "I used to be a paramedic," he said quietly, "for almost 10 years. Lena's breath hitched. The nurse's harsh words suddenly made sense. "I know your story." The way staff looked at him, the shame in his eyes when he talked about his past. "What happened?" she asked softly. Mark exhaled. "There was a call one night," he said. "A messy situation, a domestic dispute. A woman, terrified, called us saying her husband was threatening her. Not physically, But financially, legally, he was trying to take everything from her. She begged us to hurry. Lena held her daughter tighter. When we arrived, Mark continued, the husband was gone, vanished. The woman said it wasn't the first time. She said he changed identities, bank accounts, towns. Whenever responsibility caught up to him, he ran. Lena felt a sickening twist in her stomach. And that man, she began. Mark nodded. It was Evan, before he changed his name. Lena's body trembled. No, she whispered. No, that can't be true. He wasn't like that with me. He was sweet, caring. He loved this baby. Lena, Mark said gently, people like him don't change. They don't build. They don't stay. He paused. They survive by pretending. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But why were you involved? She asked. Why did you remember him so clearly? Mark's jaw tightened. Because that woman he ran from? He said quietly. She was 8 months pregnant. Lena gasped. He left her too, Mark said, right before the baby came, and he would have gotten away with everything. Again, if she hadn't delivered early and ended up in the ER. Pain sliced through Lena's chest. So he's done this before, she whispered. Yes, Mark said. And when I saw his signature today, I felt sick, because I knew what it meant. Lena looked down at her newborn, tears dripping onto the blanket. He didn't leave because he was scared of being a father, she said softly. He left because he's done this before. Mark nodded. And because he never intended to stay once the baby was born. Mark said quietly. Newborns mean paperwork. Paperwork means traceability. Traceability means risk. Lena covered her mouth, trying not to sob. All the memories, every tender moment, every promise, every kiss, felt like glass shattering in her hands. He never loved me, she whispered. He just used me. Mark shook his head. No, I don't think he used you. I think he wanted to be better. But men like him, they don't know how to stop running. Silence hung heavy in the small hospital room. Lena finally looked up at Mark, truly looked at him, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. You're telling me this because you don't want him to hurt us, she said. Mark nodded. Because I failed the last woman he left behind. I couldn't help her in time. But I can help you. And your daughter. Lena's voice cracked. Why? You don't even know me. Mark's expression softened with a quiet sincerity that made her chest ache. Because no mother should ever face this alone, he said. And because your daughter deserves a life without his shadow haunting you. A tear rolled down Lena's cheek. For the first time since Evan walked out, she felt a spark of something she thought she'd lost completely. Hope. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above them, and Lena felt the weight of everything she had learned pressing onto her chest. She looked down at her daughter, tiny, warm, fragile, and something inside her shifted. Not pain, not fear, not the shattering grief that had consumed her hours before. Something stronger, something deeper, something that felt like a fire being lit inside her bones. I won't let him ruin her life, Lena whispered. Mark nodded gently. You won't, but you shouldn't have to do it alone. His words lingered in the air, warm and steady, the exact opposite of Evan's empty promises. For the first time, Lena believed them. She looked up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. What do I do now? Mark stood, pulling the chair closer to her bed, his voice calm and practical. First, he said, you rest. You just brought a life into the world. That makes you stronger than anyone he's ever run from. Lena exhaled shakily. Second, Mark continued, we document everything. The form he signed, the time he left, the staff who saw him. You'll be protected legally. He can't just disappear without accountability. Lena felt a strange relief settle into her chest. And third, he added softly, you remember that his choices have nothing to do with your worth. Her throat tightened. You and your daughter deserve a life where you're chosen, Mark said, not abandoned in moments of weakness. A tear escaped her eye, not from heartbreak, but from the unexpected feeling of being seen. Thank you, Lena whispered. Mark shook his head lightly. Don't thank me. I didn't get to help the last woman he left behind, but I can do right by you. For a second, Lena imagined the other woman, 8 months pregnant, terrified, alone, and felt a pang of empathy so sharp it hurt. She deserved better too, Lena murmured. She did, Mark said, pain flickering across his face. But you're giving your daughter a different story, and that already makes you braver than you think. Silence settled between them, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was steady, almost peaceful. The baby stirred and opened her tiny fists, letting out a soft cry. Lena cradled her, humming gently, a sound so instinctive, so full of love that even Mark smiled. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's strong," Lena corrected softly. "Stronger than both of us." Mark nodded. "She will grow up knowing the truth, but she'll also grow up knowing she had a mother who fought for her." Lena felt her heart swell with a fierce, protective warmth. "She'll never feel abandoned," she said firmly. "Not ever." Mark hesitated, then reached into his pocket and placed the folded document on the table beside her. "You decide what to do with it," he said. "But whatever you choose, you're not alone." His sincerity made her eyes sting again, but she held herself together. This time her tears weren't of grief. They were of acceptance, of strength, of a future she finally believed they could build. As Mark stood to leave, he paused at the doorway. "Lena," he said quietly. "Yes?" He gave her a small, warm smile. "You may have been left right after labor, but you were never left without hope." Her chest tightened, not with pain, but with something healing. "Thank you," she whispered again. After he left, Lena looked at her daughter once more. The tiny face, the soft breathing, the innocent life depending entirely on her. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise." And for the first time all day, she believed it. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me below, do you believe that even after heartbreak, hope can still find us?